Welcome to Tame the Taboo. This podcast is brought to you by DiscovHER Health. DiscovHER Health specializes in healthcare, education, and resources for her most intimate concerns. I'm your host, Nurse Jenna Ray. I'm a women's health and gender-related nurse practitioner, and I am making it my business to take you from sufferer to sensei. So if you are suffering from conditions that are not easily treated in an annual exam, or you want to join me on this journey to become my healthiest, wealthiest, best business owning self, sit back, relax, and enjoy these episodes.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited.
DiscovHER Health.
DiscovHER Health. But if you search her, then it'll pop up too. But DiscovHER, I thought it was like kind of clever, but everybody always said DiscovHER. So either one.
Well, we'll say DiscovHER. We're gonna give it a shot today.
Yeah.
Starting it now.
Sorry,
Katie. Go ahead. It's up to you. You go. So tell us about DiscovHER Health. How did you come up with it?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was studying in undergrad at the University of Pennsylvania in the School of Nursing, and we were doing some programming with my sorority, and we were talking about, sex and HIV prevention, a lot of the work that I've been doing my entire career. And I had a dream, and the name DiscovHER Health popped up in my head. And I was like,
Was it an actual dream?
An actual dream.
Wow.
An actual dream. And I was like, okay, that's kind of clever. So I didn't have anything to do with it at that time. I was still in school, but I was like, okay, let me just kind of lock this away. And so I remember talking to some of my sorority sisters, and I was like, I'm going to do something with DiscovHER Health. I don't know what it's going to be, but maybe it'll be like a platform for me to answer questions or something like that. So I got a Google email address, discoverhealth@gmail.com, and tucked it away and didn't do anything with it for years, literally. So then I went off to grad school, started to do the work around like sexual health and urogynecology that I've been doing. And I had my second baby after, back to back. And I was like, okay, now's the time. I have to actually like move on this seed that God planted, years and years ago. And so I think it was January. I looked at my husband and I was like, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. It's not sustainable. So I think I'm ready to launch a practice.
Wow.
He was like, okay, I guess we can do that. So he was like, all right, what does this look like? And I was like, well, I can just do virtual medicine. I have a lot to offer. One of my favorite things to do is to teach. I was an adjunct professor at that time at Georgetown University. So it's like, we can just do some virtual care and I'll teach for a bit. And quickly that transformed into being a full-fledged brick and mortar practice with 3 offices, virtual care. I offer like business coaching, marketing. So DiscovHER Health is really kind of head to toe women's health services and all the wraparound services for business that other healthcare professionals need.
Wow, that's a lot. So amazing. All stuff that we need. Is the business coaching and that kind of stuff also for the same clientele that comes to you for the health services?
No, it's not. So that's because I was teaching at Georgetown. I know that there is a dearth of knowledge when it comes to healthcare professionals teaching complex gynecology, menopause, sexual medicine. And so I want to be able to empower other providers who want to learn this type of practice. I want to be able to educate them so that they can start to help their clients and also give them the, business services to support them because obviously I struggled. And so I was like, okay, it can't be this hard for everybody that's trying to break into this work. We have to really make it as easy as possible because the quicker we can get practices up and running and get professionals, providers able to learn this information, the more of an impact we can have.
Amazing. Well, can you tell us a little bit about some of the reasons that women would come to see you for? So we're focusing on, like Anne said, the conversations about sex that we're supposed to have. They're not supposed to. I hate that supposed to. That we really need to be having, right? For our well-being. What do women come to you for, and how do you help them?
Yeah, so women come to me to talk about sex in an unsexy way.
Right. Love it.
So tell us about that unsexy sex.
Yeah, the unsexy sex is not the stuff that you see on late night HBO. It's not the
Mhm.
unrealistic, like, oh, we're both orgasming at the same time. It is, I want to have sex, but it hurts. I want to have sex, but I don't have that desire. I used to want to have sex, but things have changed and I don't really have an understanding of why that is. I've never wanted to have sex, or I want to have sex in these other different ways and I feel othered by that. So it's really, Discover Health is really a space that is designed to feel like a spa, but where you can receive evidence-based medicine. So we focus a lot on education. So every client that comes in, we get an hour together and we learn all about normal anatomy and physiology. What does a normal, vulva look like? This is my little model here. Everybody sees this. They also get either a mirror, or we use a high definition, high resolution camera to show you your own anatomy so that you
Mhm.
have an understanding of like what's normal. And if you are seeing things that are not normal, what is it that is happening and how can we start to heal you?
Right. Yeah, I think that is really important because a lot of women, I feel, we just don't know our body parts down there, vulva, the whole area. Actually, I didn't even know either until I got into the menopause podcast. That's when I was like, oh, I need to check it out, what these parts are. And I learned all the names.
Mhm.
Mhm. Mhm.
It can really, I like to say, it's like opening up the closet when you're afraid of the boogeyman,
Mhm.
Like if you could just kind of look in there and see, okay, it's not that bad. Or hey, it is that bad. Like I do look very red. So all of the times that I've been gaslit and told that nothing is wrong with me, I'm
Mhm.
not crazy.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think it is the most essential step is you understanding like your own body so that you can walk into your own power and really advocate for yourself in order to heal.
Mhm. I love that. It's so true. Being in connection with our own truth seems like the just foundational to our well-being. So I love that approach. So walk us through an example of a woman, one of the examples that you gave us, like a woman who's like, I want sex, and I used to, but I don't. Like walk me through after that initial session. What might you get into with her?
Yeah. So we spent an hour together, so we can actually get a lot done in that initial session. So it might be looking at your clitoris and seeing that you have something called clitoral adhesions, right? Where
Mhm.
essentially you have scar tissue that's forming over the clitoris here, right? So you should be able to pull this little hood back, this little piece of skin. You should pull it out, and a gland, the clitoris that we know and love and are able to see, to be able to pop out, much like an uncircumcised penis on a man, right? And for some women, that does not happen. The scar tissue forms and this becomes buried. And so you have a much smaller clitoral gland that's visible. And you can imagine if you cannot uncover that clitoris, then you're not going to have as much sensation. And you
Mhm.
also have lots of pain because of that, right? And so it's a condition called phimosis. And so we start at the tippity top, right, of
Mhm.
the anatomy. And if a woman is coming to me and saying, like, I no longer want to have sex, we figure out really, like, is it because you're having pain and sensitivity at the clitoris? Because you have maybe something called a keratin pearl, which is essentially like a piece of sand that builds up because the skin cells kind of form together and get trapped under that piece of flesh here. And then it
Mhm.
can be very painful. So whenever someone touches your clitoris, it's no longer a pleasure response. Now it becomes hypersensitive and very painful.
That
So,
sounds really painful, by the way. Just as you're saying it, I'm like, woof. No, thank you.
but there is probably a woman out there that is like, okay, I have experienced
Yeah.
that. So it's going to be hopefully revolutionary for her to say, okay, I'm not crazy. So I
Yes.
encourage every woman to really get a baseline understanding of their anatomy. We might look at the labia, right? So you have two sets of lips or labia, the outer labia that are here and the inner labia that are here. If these inner labia have started to disappear, or what we call atrophy, that's a sign of hormone loss. So we see this often in like perimenopausal or postmenopausal women. We can also see it in very, very young women who are exposed to birth control, oral contraceptive pills, where they'll start to lose the architecture and this tissue becomes very thin. The vaginal opening here becomes very, very narrow. And so sex starts to hurt. So, of course, you don't want, right? Of course, you don't have that desire anymore because every time you touch, you clean, you wipe, you get aroused, you are met with some sort of negative thinking because it hurt. And so we really start there. There are few women, some, but few women who have completely normal anatomy down below and they still don't have that desire. So then we start to, peel back the other layers of what's happening in your life. What type of environment are you in? Are you completely stressed out? Do you live with your in-laws who don't have any sense of like privacy? What about those toddlers that are crying all night? Or you have a newborn at home that doesn't allow you to sleep? So it's really so many factors. It's really multifactorial. And so that's why we really have to get understandings for you as an individual and create an individualized plan to figure out what's going on.
I love what you're saying, and I want to make sure that I'm really clear on it. So when when a woman comes to you and you're talking about her vulva, all those beginning parts that you said, are you actually giving her an exam so that you can work with her and see like, oh, it is quite red, or there are adhesions? Oh, so this is amazing. This is like really the first time I'm hearing of this kind of service where, there's like the sex therapist and the sex educator side, and then there's the doctor side, and it's like, trying to have like a coming together of the physical and all the other parts of it, and you're bringing them both together, which is so great.
It's very much a biopsychosocial approach to it, right? So there's the biology that is associated, there's the psychology, and then there's the social. And if you treat women in silos, if you only address one of those things, then you're never going to get them to the point where they feel like they've
Mhm.
made the progress that they need. And I think I was able to figure that out pretty early on in my career because of my background. I'm a women's health and gender related nurse practitioner, but I actually started my career in urology. So
Mhm.
women with bladder issues,
Yeah.
UTIs, and surrounded by providers who were looking at men and men's sexual health. And so sexual health became a part of my practice because the male urologist was like, oh, she has a vagina, send her to Jenna,
I love it.
Very
I-
early on, I knew that I could not approach the type of care that was needed by working in a silo. Oh, I'm just going to treat your infection. I'm just going to treat your low libido. I'm just going to treat your pain. Like I was forced very early on in my career to recognize that it's so multifactorial and to be able to have the skills to bridge all of those worlds.
So
That
great.
sounds really great. You say you take an hour. Do you take insurance? Because a lot of doctors who spend that much time with their patient, most of them do not have insurance or they do not take insurance.
Yeah, it's not possible. It's really
Right.
not possible.
Yeah.
The insurance companies, especially as a nurse practitioner, I'm reimbursed at a lower rate than even the physicians doing the same amount of work, right?
Mhm.
So the work I would do, they would never pay me enough to be able to keep my doors open. And it was important to me when I was starting this practice because I know that so many specialists and providers are priced at a point where people cannot access them.
Mhm.
So me, I wanted to be able to be accessible, but also get the work done, you know? So we've priced it at a very competitive price point. So $399 for an hour-long visit is the rate that I have right now. And also the rate for my team. I have 2 nurse practitioners that work with me too. And I took it a step further because I felt as a Black woman, especially that I wanted to be accessible. And so we offer super bills. So essentially, it's a detailed receipt. So even though we don't participate directly with insurance, you can
Mhm.
take that super bill, submit it to your insurance, and get reimbursed. And
So
so
what else do they cover? Like,
a lot of insurance companies do cover. So most people are getting like 100, 150 back. It really depends on your plan though. If you have a high deductible, and I think this is important to note that even if you're going to a specialist that accepts your insurance, if you have a high deductible plan, it doesn't matter, right?
right,
Yeah.
So when
right.
I was seeing people at GW, folks were still paying out of pocket because they had $1,000, $5,000 deductible, and they were paying even more seeing me there than they are now. just because of the way that insurance works. So I don't participate directly with insurance. I don't think it is a business model that will ever be feasible, unfortunately, but I am very conscious about being able to be accessible. And I'm trying to, think about all of the tips and tricks that I can to be able to extend my services to people who need it.
I think it sounds great. Are you able to do, going back to the physical exam question, with the virtual, the telemedicine piece, does that mean that does that exclude the physical exam? Because
It does. What we do is, so a part of the DiscovHER Health brand, we have healthcare, education, and resources. And so one of the resources we have is Her Shop. And inside of Her Shop, which is our online store, there are mirrors with lights that you can purchase. And so we can talk about the normal anatomy in a virtual visit, and then you could purchase the mirror so that you can see for yourselves your normal anatomy and start to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together. But what most people use virtual care for is to get a feel for me. I like her. What's the vibes, right? And then if they feel like it's going to be a good fit, a good relationship, then most people will come and see me in person.
Great. What did you have a next question that you wanted to ask Hannah Ann?
Yeah, so I was going to ask, for women over 40s, let's say peri and menopause, what is their most complaint? What is the most, I mean, if there is one, is there like a pattern besides just, the dry vaginal symptoms? Is there any other things that you see that comes up often?
Yeah, I tend to see a lot of Black patients because, as a Black provider, the girlies are like, hey, okay, I can, go and see her. And one of the things that happens with Black women as we are transitioning into menopause and beyond is that when we suffer from hot flashes at a much greater rate than, our white counterparts. So I do see a lot of women with hot flashes. Same thing with weight gain. So I see lots of women with weight gain, which people can be surprised about. That is one of the side effects or one of the components of the perimenopausal transition. And then hair. So hair thinning, and we have resources for hair thinning. And then also starting to develop facial hair, which is something that postpartum women, especially and women in this perimenopause phase, to start to develop. And so we do offer laser hair removal and some skin treatments too for that, because menopause is not just vaginal dryness, though that is one of the most common complaints that I see, but it affects women every aspect, hair, skin, nails, mood. So it really does affect the whole person, and try to create services to address every issue that comes up.
And what do you recommend for women who come in for vaginal dryness?
So yeah, we do have a free resource on our website, and I will share the link with you, but it is a guide to choosing the right lubricant for you. And that's usually the place where most people start is, trying to find a lube. So going to CVS and looking and, trying to find the perfect one. And so I try to create a resource that can teach people all about vaginal dryness, and also where you can learn where some of the trusted brands come from. So that is a free resource that I'm happy to share with your audience. Vaginal hormones, specifically vaginal estrogen, I think that every woman, going through perimenopause and menopause and beyond needs to be on. It is a lifesaver. It prevents urinary tract infections. It helps to treat overactive bladder symptoms like frequency and urgency and incontinence. It can help with sexual function. And I think that it should definitely be something that women are considering and that providers need to be prescribing a whole lot more of, because if we can stop the thinning of the skin by replenishing some of the vaginal estrogen that is lost during the perimenopausal transition, we can really literally save lives, because your grandmother's not dying of a gunshot wound, right? She's dying because she woke up in the middle of the night and tried to run to the bathroom and fell and broke her hip, right? She's dying of sepsis because she has yet another urinary tract infection and none of the antibiotics work for it. And so if we can prevent this in our 40s and 50s, we can extend our lives, in our 70s and 80s and beyond.
And dilators, when do you recommend dilators for your patients? You've got all your toys out. I love it. You're prepared.
I know. Yeah, I keep these are actually literally just always around. I was not like, oh, let's be on a podcast. Like literally. Um, but dilators are a great tool. So this is one of the larger size dilators. So if you're feeling tension or tightness and you're like, my partner just doesn't fit anymore, or the toys that I like just don't fit anymore, a dilator is a great option to gradually increase the capacity to have pain-free penetration. And so there's not a specific time that I recommend dilators. Again, it's about having an individualized approach because if a woman has some sort of trauma and she doesn't want any sort of penetration, then I'm not going to be like, well, you need to be using dilators. So it's really about kind of meeting and figuring out what you are ready for, what you are willing to do, and then we create a tailored program. But dilators are definitely inside of my toolkit.
Okay. And how do they work? I mean, I know that I know nothing about dilators, but I just know that there's different sizes. So, like, do you graduate to a larger size? How does it?
Yeah. So these are the dilators by Intimate Rose, and they can be found in the DiscovHER shop. Um, and so I'll just show you. So these are some of the sizes. So really what you do is you find the size that fits in comfortably and you start there. You like breathing techniques. So literally most women don't know how to breathe, right? We breathe and we clench and you take these shallow breaths. But if we can start with breathing through the dilators, then once you feel comfortable with the smaller size, then you will graduate. And there are a couple sizes in between these two. Then you will graduate to the next size. And you kind of move at your own pace. After you are pain free and you feel like, okay, now I can get it in, right? So the first step is, okay, can I actually get this inside and fit it? Then
Mhm.
it is, can I breathe comfortably with it in? Then it is, can I move it around comfortably, right? And then can I, mimic the motion that I would want? So if penetration is what you're looking for, can I comfortably move it in and out? And once you can do that and you feel confident, then you move up to the next size.
Mm. Okay. Got it. What are the circumstances under which you recommend women work with those?
So some of the circumstances would be menopause and perimenopause. So anytime that you are having these hormone transitions that are going to cause this tissue to become smaller, thinner, tighter, I would recommend using dilators. If you have a history of painful intercourse, even if you are not perimenopausal or menopausal, I would recommend dilators. If you are going through some sort of cancer treatment near the pelvis, radiation specifically, I would recommend dilators because you can create a lot of scar tissue during those treatments and you can have it where the vagina becomes very, very small. And so if you do dilators throughout your treatment, you can keep the stretch so that you're not dealing with these after effects. And that's something that I would hope that a lot of oncologists will start to learn that, when we talk about cancer, it's not just how you survive cancer, is how do I thrive after this, right? And
Right.
if I no longer have access to something that I enjoy, like penetration because of the cancer treatment, then that's going to definitely be a detriment to my overall health and wellness. So dilators during cancer treatments is a really good idea too.
Yes, sir. What are some of the things that you recommend to all of your patients that would be like some kind of like lifestyle things that they could do to just boost their vitality and like their desire and just sort of, things that might contribute to issues that they would come to you for, but are like lifestyle modifications that they can just do at home and change to improve their sexual well-being. What would you recommend?
Yeah. A couple of things. One is definitely learning how to breathe, right? So take a deep breath, right? And if you've ever played like a wind instrument or done any sort of like voice training, then you are taught how to breathe into the diaphragm. And the diaphragm is a small muscle that's actually a part of the pelvis too. It's a part of the pelvic floor. And it sits kind of right above the belly, you would imagine. And so if we can do that diaphragmatic breathing, that belly breathing, and expand our bellies, our abdomen as we breathe in, it creates space in the pelvic floor. If we are drawing these, very shallow breaths into our chest, we're never creating the space that the pelvis needs to be able to have the movement and the stretch that is required. So something as simple as literally take a breath, sis. Like learn how to breathe.
Yeah, I love it so much. You had me at the respiratory diaphragm as part of the pelvic floor. You had me right there. Because Ann knows that's like what I do. I teach people yoga for the pelvis, and I'm all about that. And it's like I've never heard another medical practitioner talk like that. So yes, yes, yes. Thank you for sharing with our listeners.
Of course, when I do that exam, so you'll get a mirror or we'll use the, high resolution camera, but I'm also teaching you. So before I ever lay my hands on you, I'm teaching you how to breathe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I say, put one hand on the chest, one hand on the belly, and we take a couple breaths just to kind of get you used to and comfortable with me and my presence in this very vulnerable stage or state. And then we just notice, like, where's the movement? Is my top hand moving? Is my bottom hand moving? And then after a couple breaths, we transition into being intentional about having that bottom hand move. So instead of having those chest breaths, we intentionally breathe into our belly. And this is what I'm doing with my clients before I ever lay hands on them. So I'm teaching them in real time how to do diaphragmatic breathing.
I love it. Yay.
Yeah.
I'm so to hear that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Is there anything?
So recommending yoga for sure.
Yes.
And is there anything else that you like to bring up that, we should all know about sexual health?
Yeah. One thing I also share with all of my clients is my catchphrase. I guess one of them is consent is only consent if it can be withdrawn. So just because you have decided that you are ready for a change and you want to do an exam, for example, do not feel like you have to grin and bear a speculum exam to get you closer to a diagnosis. I rarely use speculums. They're not necessary. The vulva, we see so much function externally that we can do a lot and learn a lot about your body without putting something inside. So you do not have to consent to an internal exam. You do not have to make a speculum and getting through a speculum exam the end all be all to feel healthy. And so really just knowing that you do have a voice, and if a provider or a partner is trying to get you to do something that is painful that you do not consent to, withdraw your consent. Say no, say stop, and you have the right to do so.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
A great way to practice sexual empowerment and sexual integrity for ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. We're about running out of time. Any last questions, Liz?
Anything you want to share with us? Like, how can our listeners find you and work with you and utilize all these amazing resources you're talking about?
Yeah, so you can visit resources.discovherhealth.com and you can find free resources there. You can also follow me on social media. So I am on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. And I just launched a podcast. It is called Tame the Taboo. And you can find where all podcasts are found. And we are just having these conversations that are usually had in private. We're having it in public. So we talk about health and wealth and how to just be your full best self.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I just want to mention, just for our listener, that DiscovHER Health is DiscovHERHEALTH. This is almost messed up on my spelling. But just
Her health.
yes. Thank you. Thanks so much for coming on, Jenna, and
having me. It's truly been a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Tame the Taboo. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. Send this to your girlfriend so they can join you on your journey as we transition to our healthiest, wealthiest, best selves. See you on the next episode.